Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Death and Mirrors, All Things Dark and Deadly, Book 1 by S.F. Benson, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Meeting a Ghost, London, England, January 1888. I practiced invoking the dead for months, but had yet to meet a ghost. Not that I sought a random one. I hunted for my mother, acclaimed archaeologist Evaline Wainwright. A year passed since the unfortunate cave-in caused her death, and I missed her terribly. I missed her smile and the way she encouraged me to always be my best. Mother never failed to tell me the positives about being magical. Father, on the other hand, only highlighted the negativity that came with having powers. He constantly warned me of the possibility of punishment if I practiced outside the house. Doing so without a license could get me thrown into jail. But Father also restricted what I could do within our four walls. He forbade me to use my necromancy or any other magical intervention to contact Mother, but I needed closure in the worst way. After all, I still required lessons to wield my powers efficiently. Mother said when I turned 21, my abilities would amplify. Well, my birthday passed without an ounce of fanfare. Father barely acknowledged the event. He did nothing to help me with my magic either. All he did was tell me why I shouldn't use it. You lack a proper license. Young ladies refrain from such things. Father droned on about all the cons of being magical instead of helping me. It was just one of the many reasons I was desperate to speak with Mother. Tossing and turning didn't help the situation. I peered at the clock. Almost 6 a.m. The staff would soon prepare breakfast and start cleaning. Normally, I slept until 8 or 9, but my mind raced through every incantation and ritual. Trying to figure out why I couldn't rouse the spirit world baffled me. Something that had beckoned me all night long was a freshly baked batch of coasting cookies. I salivated, imagining the crispy, sweet morsels. More than once, I thought about going to the kitchen and raiding the larder. Unfortunately, I had a wicked appetite for desserts. Since sleep wasn't happening and I was hungry, I threw my legs over the side of the bed and reached for my velvet dressing gown. A ghastly winter wind blustered through the open window. I tucked my feet into my slippers and hurried to shut the transom when something caught my eye. Despite the lack of light, a definite shadow stood by the hearth. Who goes there? I asked, standing tall. Mother often said, never let someone know that you're scared. Show yourself. An icy chill passed over me as the figure tore itself from the darkness. Before me, like a character out of time, was the ghost I tried to call forth. Mother? Not quite, she said. I'm her shade. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it must be a dream or a hallucination. I assure you, Evaline, you are not dreaming, said the familiar voice. You called for your mother. I'm here in her place. Not possible. Every night I enacted the ritual, and every night nothing worthwhile happened. Why would my mother's specter appear now? The ghost, dressed in a dark gold traveling ensemble, stepped forward and sat on my bed as though she were corporeal. You doubt what you see. Not a question. With my track record, no one would blame me for being skeptical. Evaline, you don't trust I am who I say I am. Maybe this will help. Remember how your mother bandaged your knee on the first day of school? You tore your dress and stockings playing hide and seek with Delbert Higginbotham. I smiled as I sat beside her. Delbert and I became fast friends that day. The adventurous, bright-eyed boy cared more about having fun than education. Just like me. How about this one? Remember when the Robinsons moved in down the street? While I had tea with Charlotte, you played with Bernadette. Dolls. She had a beautiful one from China. The specter nodded. What about the day Delbert became more than your best friend? You told your mother over breakfast about your admirer. My face heated. I was 14 when I discovered I had deeper feelings for Delbert. All right, maybe I wasn't dreaming or hallucinating. I've tried for months to reach you. Why come to me now? Everything comes with the time is right, my dear. She folded her elegant hands in her lap. Evaline, you are on the precipice of great things. Your abilities are stronger. Soon it will be time to test your magic's merit. But how? I didn't have a license to practice or the proper skills. The shade held up a slim finger. Allow me to speak. We have little time together. She stood and floated across the floor to the fireplace. With a wave of her hand, the flames appeared, taking the frostiness out of the room. Your parents' last archaeological dig left you confused. Father said they found nothing on the expedition, but I doubted that. They never came home without new relics. Not true. The apparition faced me. Her eyebrows knitted together briefly, and then she said, Mally and Everett were on the hunt for a rare relic known as the Firestone. Your mother journeyed into the cave believing the gem was inside. Instead, she found a mirror. That made no sense. Mirrors didn't belong inside caverns. How? It wasn't an ordinary looking glass, my dear. It was a gateway to another world. I sat taller and leaned forward. Do you mean an alternate universe? Those things exist? Yes. The land Mally viewed mirrored London, but time and laws behaved differently there. My pulse quickened as I thought about Mother being alive and well. Please tell me my mother is in the other universe. The spirit's shoulders curled over her chest. I hate to disappoint you, but Mally isn't alive. When she peered into the looking glass, she stared into the eyes of death. The harvester claimed her, but not before unleashing a blight upon your family. Although the window was no longer open, a shiver snaked down my spine. What harvester do you mean? What blight? The ghost folded her arms. Death reaped her soul. As far as the curse goes, it will transcend time and plague you and your father. It's best you stay out of the mirror world. Otherwise, evil will come for you too. A dire warning wasn't enough to deter me. Does father know about the curse? The specter grimaced. He does. It's why Everett no longer goes on expeditions. It's the only way to avoid misfortune. It sounded like something father would say. Learn if the object is real or a myth. A little deductive reasoning might get me more information. Tell me more about this relic. Is it something father would go after? The artifact holds power over life and death. If Everett goes on another excavation, evil will follow. You might lose him. When my lips parted, she added, Don't even think about going after it, Evaline. Danger will transpire. You will lose all those you love and hold dear. Ominous words, but not enough to prevent me from delving further. Yes, I believed in magic, but not the malarkey surrounding an artifact. In my mind, that level of superstition was equivalent to believing in vampires, werewolves, and other paranormal rubbish. Perhaps I should focus my questions to the gem and its location. I smelled a mystery worthy of the notorious Sherlock Holmes. I considered myself a burgeoning detective and welcomed the opportunity to uncover any puzzle. So far, I learned that solving a conundrum required asking the right questions and following the clues. Above all else, keeping one's eyes open for any potentiality. When I glanced up, the apparition had vanished. Even the fire snuffed out. It was like she'd never been in the room. For a moment, I sat there, too stunned to move. Did I truly summon the apparition, or was something else responsible for the appearance? One could never be altogether certain with necromancy. Plus, there was an abundance of magical beings in our district. Plenty of people knew of my family's misfortune. In all likelihood, one of those individuals might be responsible. Unfortunately, many of those practitioners were also fraudulent. They were willing to do anything to make money. Because of the predominance of charlatans, the government required a license to perform magic. Without one, a person might be arrested for impersonation. It was easier and safer to keep one's abilities hidden. Still, that didn't negate the presence of Mother's shade. What I needed was tangible, irrefutable proof of the specter's words. She claimed the Firestone was a genuine article. There was no one I could ask about the relic, but I had Mother's journal. Upon her death, I discovered the notebook in her things. Perhaps there were clues about the reputed artifact in its pages. It wouldn't hurt to look. I jumped off the bed and ran over to the trunk against the far wall. When Father packed up Mother's belongings, I snagged her journal when he wasn't looking. To keep my father and our housekeeper from finding the notebook, I buried it beneath my out-of-season evening gowns. Lifting the delicate silks and satins, I pulled out the worn brown leather diary. Engraved on its surface were the words, "The Chronicles of Mally Liddell Wainwright." I walked to my desk beneath the window and lit a candle. Then I unwrapped the binding and flipped the pages to an entry prior to Mother's last expedition. May 1886. Everett and I are planning our greatest excavation to date. Soon we'll set sail for Egypt. From my research, along with a little magic, I've narrowed down the location for the Firestone. Everett thinks I'm daft for wanting to go after a mythical gem, but the object holds the answers. Whoever possesses it controls life. I don't wish to harness its powers. I want to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. So Mother was searching for the elusive artifact, but the spirit said it had power over life and death. I turned to the next page. As a necromancer, I have no need for the object. My concern is with the Ravenstone. Fire brings life, while Raven brings death. If someone has both gems, they'd be a god. No man or woman should think themselves divine. While in Egypt, I will search for the antithesis as well. Only when both objects are secure will mankind be safe. Did the artifacts have an Egyptian origin? It was well documented how the ancients thought themselves to be holier than God himself. Unexpectedly, my bedroom door flew open. A gust of wind blew through the room, snuffing out the sole candle. I dropped the journal, and an empty feeling settled in the pit of my stomach as I rose to my feet. When I looked toward the hall, my mouth dried up. Between the jambs stood an image swathed in a black cloak. It raised an arm and displayed a slender hand sporting an ornate dark ring. Sallow fingers pointed in my direction. An eerie moan escaped the parsonage, and then a low voice said, "Beware, Evaline Wainwright." My limbs shook, and I had an overwhelming need to visit the water closet. My mouth opened and closed like a fish out of the Thames, but no words came forth. The stranger turned its back and stalked out of sight. What was that? I pushed my fear aside and willed my feet to move. The stranger headed toward the stairs. I ran after it, but lost sight of it on the third-floor landing. There was no sign anyone had been in the house, just a cool breeze blew past me. Then the floorboard creaked in the distance.